Hey, I'm Kenneth Wajda. I'm a professional photographer here in Colorado. Welcome to another one of my photo chats. So, I was just in New York City. MaryLee's was out there and she was performing a one-woman show off-Broadway, which of course I brought cameras to photograph her. And so because I would be working for her and documenting her show and shooting her rehearsal and getting her a lot of publicity stills, I brought my D750 Nikon camera, and then for a walk-around camera I brought the Leica M2 with a little 35, it's not even collapsible, it doesn't even open, it just is a 35 3.5 Elmar that's always that little. And that was the perfect setup because I just had the two cameras with me, and I used the Leica for film shots, I used the digital for street and for the production photos. And I love walking the streets of New York. In 5 days, I put on 91,000 steps, which according to some online calculator says I was about 40 miles, which if you told me I'm going to walk 8 miles a day, I would say, what are you, nuts? But I guess I did. And whenever I was between other events that friends and I were doing in New York, we were there for 5 days, then I would just walk and just walk endlessly. And there's no telling where to go. Everywhere you go is a possibility, and nowhere is the better place or the worst place. There's no such thing because it's a constantly changing environment. So you just have to walk. You just have to work. In all of the streets that I photographed on, I had two people say something to me. One came up to me and says, "How is it you're able to shoot without holding the camera to your eye?" And I said, "Oh, because it's a 28mm lens, and I know that the field of view is about here, and when the person gets to about there, they're going to leave the frame." And then he said, "But I shoot a lot of birds and landscape, but how do you shoot people? And do you need releases, and do you need their approval and their consent?" And I said, "No, you don't. It's street, it's public. And so there's no expectation of privacy, and you can just shoot. But," this is using the D610, it's not the 750, "but I have a trick. When I'm shooting, I'm often walking like this, and I'm shooting as I'm walking at a fast enough shutter that I know I can get whatever's in front of me in focus. And then if I want to shoot somebody over here, I'll often do this, shoot, and then put this over my shoulder, and then as soon as I pass them, I bring it back off. And I'm constantly playing with the strap as if I'm adjusting it, but I'm often shooting in directions that I'm not actually hanging up my camera at all. It's one of my slight decoys to make it so that if I'm creating motion, people will assume you're not making photographs. But if you're shooting at a high shutter speed, at f11, f8, you can get everything in focus wherever you point the camera. There's one photo, I'll put a link to a gallery of photos on from that New York trip. There's one photo of a man sleeping in his air conditioner car. It's a car that has some kind of an air conditioner service, and he's sleeping, and it was right next to me on the right. And as I'm walking by, I'm like, okay, I want to walk past that. I want to photograph him, but I don't want to draw attention. So it's just sort of that move, shoot it here, and then hang the camera up. And a lot of times I'll shoot like this. A lot of times if I see something I'm aware of, that it's like there was ice skaters, that I want to see what I'm getting. I can't shoot off of here. I need to actually see. Then I'll just hold the camera up and I'll make it very intentional that I'm photographing ice skaters. But most of the time I'm shooting without looking through the camera, and I'm playing that little game of misdirection with the camera while I'm shooting in other directions, because I'm trying to get people without noticing me. I'm trying to get people completely unobtrusively. There was one woman, I'll put her photo in the gallery. She and her friend were both hailing cabs, or the same cab. And her friend had both hands up and she had one hand up. And I walked past them and I shot as I walked past them. And then I turned back because I thought a cab was pulling up, and I thought I'd see if I could get a little street moment of New York City and somebody getting into a cab. And she turned to me and said, "Do not take my picture again." And I said, I'm just documenting the streets of New York, and it's a street photography project. And she's like, I said, don't take my picture. And I said, it is a public space, and I am photographing in public, and you're in public. And then she got into the cab, and off she went. And it wasn't that confrontational. There was 30 feet between us, and nobody was attacking each other. But it was the one time that somebody noticed me and spoke up, as opposed to the other gentleman who asked me questions about how I'm doing what I'm doing, who noticed me. And I just have answers for what I'm working on. And if we were to go further, I would explain I'm going to put some of these on my Bryce Stryker project. I'm going to put some of these into a street photo gallery. It's been built over many years. It includes a lot of people from a lot of different cities. And I have a right to make photographs in the street, but I also have to explain to people who are assuming that they have a right to privacy that I'm not trying to offend them. I'm trying to just document the world, and they happen to be in front of my lens. But that was a really good trip, and it was great 5 days in New York. We were staying at 39th and 9th, so I was able to go walk down to B&H Photo. I was able to walk into Midtown, and I got an awful lot of steps in. There was even an art show up at the North End, and in that art show, the Howard Greenberg Gallery had an exhibit of some Vivian Maier photographs and some other photographs from street photographers over the decades, including like Helen Levitt. And that was a really worthwhile show to go to too. And anyway, it was good to be out in New York and part of the New York street photography scene. So take a look at the link below. You'll see the photos that I made from that, and I'm glad to share them with you. All right, that's today's Photography Talk. If you're enjoying these, hit the subscribe button. If you can support, hit the Patreon. I'll be back next time. We'll talk more photography. As always, here's the good light.